how much more can you say her friggin' name? It's in the title of the bill.
September 1st, 2020, episode 17, season 2 of America's fastest growing podcast. We do 3 or 4 segments each week, take a look at things on the nation's plate. Today's lineup: in the long, hot summer of 2020, we look at Rand Paul and his wife trying to get back to their hotel from the White House. In Get Woke, Go Broke, we're going to look at professional sports orchestrating their own decline. And in They Really Said That, we entitle this week's entry into that segment, Word Salads Are on the Menu This Fall. Okay.
All right, welcome back to the Libation Station, everyone.
Yeah.
It's season 2, episode 17 of Barney and Clyde. As Barney pointed out, your premier and fastest growing Columbus, Indiana conservative libertarian exchange of ideas. For any of you newly joining us, Barney is a conservative and I'm a libertarian, and there's a lot of Venn diagram overlap in our views, but there's also some divergence as well, and we always seem to have a distinct take on the matters on the nation's plate. So that's what we bring to you each fortnight, and we're glad you're here to join us. And each of those fortnights we have some kind of beverage or another. Barney, what are you having today?
And the reason being that in non-pandemic times, we meet at the actual libation station, a bar down in my basement across from my office, but we hoist a cold one remotely, given the circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, what do I got here?
Yeah.
Cherry Bundy natural tart cherry juice, sweetened with a hint of apple juice. Gives me 8% of my potassium, and
Is it not sweetened?
Let me have a taste. Very nice. The apple juice really rounds it out. It's very good.
Okay, very good. That sounds awesome. I'll have to try some of that. Okay, yeah. I've seen that around. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a little early yet, but I'm going to have me a good old PBR, Pabst Blue Ribbon.
There you go.
About 3 in the afternoon, so it's a little early, but not too early. But I'm going to show you a little something. Here's a trick. Here's how to do it on the cheap, right? If you're like a Modelo or a Corona with a lime, that kind of thing, save yourself some money and just get you PBR tall boy and squeeze a lime in it.
There you go.
And it is crisp and refreshing. It's the moral of the story is not that PBR is, especially good. It's just that Modelo and Corona and Dos Equis aren't markedly better.
Okay. That's an interesting
But
opinion.
they cost a little bit more, so.
Yeah. Well, all right. Every day brings us ample new reportage of some mob scene somewhere in the United States. I think the risk is becoming of one becoming inured to it, because Portland and Detroit and Chicago and St. Louis. Over the weekend there were melees. Is that the word I'm looking for? MELEE, I think. Anyway,
I hope so.
In several cities, 4 I can think of offhand: Washington D.C., Chicago, St. Louis, and Portland, and people were shot in each instance, and in 3 of the instances it was law enforcement officers. Anyway, but Washington's been a scene of a lot of stuff. There's that lady that would not raise her fist a couple of weeks ago at the Washington D.C. restaurant. Well, this time, Rand Paul, senator from Kentucky, libertarian-leaning conservative, and he had sponsored a while back a bill. You kind of know some about that. I'm going to have you talk about that. But the Breonna Taylor, who was a gal who was shot in a no-knock warrant situation in Louisville, which has also had its share of unrest over that and also George Floyd. But anyway, back in maybe March or February or March, she was killed, and he sponsored a bill in her name. That wasn't. This crowd was screaming in his face. He and his wife had been at the White House for, what was it, a Donald Trump?
Yeah. Did you watch the video?
Yes, and it's chilling.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to put the video in at this spot.
Yeah, let's.
We have Rand Paul here in downtown Washington, D.C., just getting out of the Republican event at the White House with Trump accepting the nomination for the Republican Party for the 2020 election. He is surrounded by a crowd of protesters here, as well as this line of Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police.
The people who are surrounding them and like pushing cops and pushing people into Dr. Paul and his wife, there's several of them are screaming, "Say her name," and that's become the the calling card for calling out the situation that happened to Breonna Taylor. Like you said, she was killed in a no-knock raid where the police got the wrong address or went to the wrong place, and they shot the house up, killed her, and I believe her boyfriend was injured and taken to jail. So they're demanding justice, and all these people know about Rand Paul is that he's white and he's a Republican, and therefore he must be evil.
Yeah.
It sickens me because, man, the guy has done so much. I mean, when you talk about legislation, the stuff that you can do with legislation, he's really tried to put forth an effort for equality and for a lot of criminal justice stuff, a lot of stuff that would affect the black community at large. He supported, like I said, multiple bills on criminal justice reform, record expungement, voting rights, civil asset forfeiture, hate crime legislation. And he's been willing to work with Democrats and the few independents in Congress to get that kind of stuff done. And it just amazes me that someone could be so fucking stupid as to yell at him, say her name, Breonna Taylor. He authored the Justice for Breonna Taylor bill, or the Justice for Breonna Taylor Act, to end no-knock warrants. So specifically with her name in the title. I mean, how much more can you say her friggin' name? It's in the title of the bill.
Exactly.
And it ends the very situation that led to her death.
I don't know. I suppose this has to be handled delicately, but
as do all things, But that's the point. They're not handling it delicately. They're throwing crap at these people and making assumptions about them.
I'm going back to my point that I made at the outset that. This is in some cities, Portland, it's been nightly, that's literally nightly since late May, these riots. And there's a development that's come along that really disturbs me and sheds new light on this whole summer of violence that we're going through.
Summer of violence. That's good branding.
Yeah. Well, and I need to send this to you too to put up as a postal link for our viewers and listeners. But there's a website called Knowledge is Good, and an article there written by former state and federal prosecutor George Perry, and he filled in the timeline by which prosecutors there became privy to the toxicology report that showed that George Floyd was ODing at the time of his
I've heard this
run-in with the police. The original preliminary autopsy stated that Floyd had died of cardiopulmonary arrest, complicating law enforcement subdual, restraint, and neck compression. But the
Neck compression is
Hennepin
an
County
awfully
Medical
delicate way to
Examiner's
say
Office
that.
didn't get the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office did not get this toxicology report till after that.
Yeah.
And until after Derek Chauvin and the others had been arrested. This report shows that if he'd been at home, just sitting on his couch, he would have overdosed and died, given the amount of fentanyl in the system.
I've heard this, and well, I don't know the facts of the situation, but I think that we all need to get prepared for a lot more of this violence, and we need to get prepared for a lot more riots, because Derek Chauvin is going to walk. He's not going to be convicted, and this is why. I mean, I have two questions. One, okay, so if we're talking about hypotheticals, we can pose a couple hypotheticals. One, you've already posed, and that is, had Derek Chauvin not put his neck on George Floyd, or his knee on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes, George Floyd would have died anyway. Okay, probably. We don't know that, but okay, probably. I'll give you that much. But what if he hadn't had fentanyl in his system, but he did have Derek Chauvin's knee on his neck for 9 minutes? Would he have died in that situation? So I think that's
You're right. I mean, that's a valid question, and it's hypothetical, but to the extent that we can get to it with models or whatever, we need to.
Right.
But I think you're also right that the level of rage in this country has gotten to the point where it's taken on a life of its own, and Derek Chauvin walking is gonna just
it's going to be an explosion. I mean, it's just going to be an explosion. People are going to die. I mean, here's the question. Would society be better off if we throw this guy to the volcano? Should we just sacrifice him to the volcano gods? Is it, if it's found out that George Floyd died of fentanyl overdose, should we just put this guy in jail forever anyway, or send him to the electric chair anyway, just to
spare
save
the country another round of
all the people that are going to die in the next wave, in the next wave of not coronavirus, but of
urban unrest?
Urban unrest.
Yeah. Man, that's a tough one. And as a libertarian, back to Rand Paul and a couple of weeks ago, the lady at the restaurant in D.C. who would not raise her fist. By the way, that lady's a progressive, and told those harassing her that she actually agreed with their cause.
Yeah.
But she said, no, I'm not going to sit here and be intimidated into raising my fist. As a libertarian, doesn't those kinds of tactics particularly get your hackles up?
Well, yeah, I think
you ought to be free to go out to hear a speech with your wife, or go to dinner with your friends, or without being harassed.
The core of the libertarian philosophy is the non-aggression principle, which just means that you don't initiate force against somebody else. You are never the beginning of violence. You can use violence to retaliate or to defend, but you don't start fights. And that's what's happening here. That's what happens when you get the silence is violence crowd, is that they picture you as having already started the fight with words. And I don't think that you would find many libertarians who would agree that starts the fight, is the words. You can do or say anything you want. But here's the thing. I think that Paul has gotten himself, well, I won't say he himself, he's gotten into sort of hot water because of his supposed rejection of a bill that was put forth in Congress, an anti-lynching bill.
Okay.
And he had a great op-ed in the Courier-Journal, the Louisville newspaper. He's the senator from Kentucky, so it makes sense that he puts that in. And Breonna Taylor was a Louisville resident.
Right.
And they were, the media, including the Journal, had been giving him a blast of crap for not supporting this bill. and his rebuttal was two things. One, killing people and lynching people are already illegal, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like hate speech stuff.
Yeah, it's the hate crime laws, like
for hate crime laws. Yeah,
with the hate crime laws, the actual violence committed is already illegal, right? You can't hurt people, and you can't steal or damage their stuff. Like, that's the basic fundamental part of all of our laws. You can't
going back to the 10 Commandments.
Take other people's stuff. Yeah, you can't hurt other people. Yeah. So what he was saying was he supported the bill. He just wanted an amendment that showed exactly what the penalties would be, right? So that people didn't go to jail, for example, for slapping somebody, that it didn't carry like a 10-year minimum sentence for the hate crime, right? So if it was determined that somebody hits somebody else and it's purely out of, racial issues, that person goes to jail for 10 years, So while I think it's pretty gross if somebody wants to, slap somebody or deck somebody just because of the color of their skin, I'm not really sure that that's a 10-year jail sentence.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider the fact that prisons are breeding grounds for hate groups, and that's where people get more intolerant, not less. So if you want to create more hate and you want to create more people who belong to hate groups, then by all means. But anyway, so people don't read past the headlines, though. So what everybody thinks of Rand Paul is that he wouldn't support a bill that criminalized lynching. So now he's enemy number one.
It's another case of people choosing to gloss over particular aspects of a person's track record to get the conclusion they want, which is that this guy deserves to be pilloried, or
Right. And it's you can never be woke enough, because God, this is a great Milton Friedman quote where he's like, I'm on your side, but you're not. It's like you're throwing rocks at the one person that's actually done something to try to help the situation.
All right, looks like we're ready for segment 2.
Yeah, let's move on.
Get woke, go broke. This situation is a classic example of that. Professional sports is already palpably suffering for having gone in for all this social justice, with the football players wearing social justice slogans on their helmets, and basketball players wearing them on their jerseys. And people are tuning out. There's an article today at City Journal, which is the quarterly magazine of the Manhattan Institute, and the Americans have really been tuning this stuff out. The NBA's network TV premium broadcast ratings on ABC are off by 45%, which is what a former public relations executive for the NBA describes as a cratering of viewership. They cite a number of other figures to substantiate. There's a fella, a black sports writer who writes for Outkick.com, which is a really great. It's mostly a sports focus, but they expand their scope. They broaden their scope to talk about things like this. And Jason Whitlock said recently that NBA star LeBron James, he brought up the fact that LeBron James had tweeted that he was terrified of living in America. And Whitlock wrote, "I'm black. I'm not scared. I'm not terrified. And neither is LeBron James. He's lying." And he and the political activists controlling him want black people to immerse themselves in fear. Fear is a tool used to control people. And actually, in another place, I think maybe it was at Medium or something, Whitlock had a piece where he says, consider the amount of influence China over the NBA, and how the Nike Corporation plays a role in all this too.
Just in the amount of advertising that Chinese companies buy, or?
Nike does most of its manufacturing of its athletic shoes in Japan, or excuse me, in China. And Nike went went in for the woke thing big with Colin Kaepernick, and China sees this as an end to foster disrespect among the American public for its basic institutions and founding principles,
So you're saying that? Are you saying that the Chinese Communist Party is directly and intentionally sowing discord amongst Americans in order for some political gain?
Yeah, via the profession, its influence over U.S. professional sports.
How does that help China though? Like, how do they? I mean, I don't disbelieve you. I'm just wondering how that helps China. What end do they get to?
Demoralized America is not one that's able to prevent China's rise to supremacy on the world stage.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'll try to find this, that piece too.
I mean, I think that I don't want to be obtuse. I think that communism is responsible for hundreds of millions of deaths, and that the Chinese state capitalist version of that implementation is even more
stories about
concerning. But
stories about what they're doing to the Uyghurs, the Muslim minority in Xinjiang province, is just heartbreaking.
Yeah, but the same could be said about the United States and the devastation in Yemen and Iraq and Syria and Libya and Somalia, and I could probably go on.
Well, that's that's an area that's kind of outside our Venn diagram, but your point is one worth discussing. Yeah,
as is yours, and I didn't mean to take you off of it. So, by all means, please continue.
But and I didn't really want to go too far down the China rabbit hole. The Jason Whitlock's main point is that these guys, unless you're just completely ate up with wokeness, they look pretty silly, given that they are, the amount of money they make and the amount of pampering they get. So
yeah, it's like the Oprah situation where she was all crying about how about racial discrimination and about how black people are held back and all that kind of stuff, and people were just in droves, just like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, your empire is not possible without millions and millions of white people buying your crap. That's what they do. That's why you're famous and rich and powerful.
Now, the interesting thing is, it's going to take a while to see how all this shakes out. The NBA is in the process of trying to wind up last season. They're having their playoffs right now, which are usually all done by June. Mm-hmm. And when will they get going with their next season, which normally starts in early November? And so there's a few things. Plus, the pandemic's a factor in all this. Social distancing at basketball arenas.
Were they distancing, or were they were doing empty stands, weren't they? And only
okay, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah,
I'm not sure if it was the NBA, but some of the sports leagues, and I got to say, I've always just been completely uninterested in professional sports my entire life, but I like chicken wings and beer, but that's about it. But some of them had done like the stands empty and the players on the field, and they do. Like, they sweeten the audio with crowd reactions and claps and stuff.
I'm not clear on which sports leagues are doing partial attendance and which ones are playing have the teams planned to completely empty venues. Most sports fans, and I'm not a huge sports fan either. There's been a few years where I followed certain teams when they were doing really great. The Colts back during the Peyton Manning era and some things like that, but. For the most part, what I do know about really diehard sports fans is that it's a release. It's a way to get away from all the rest of this
Right.
stuff. It's an escape if you want to. Although I'm not sure I want to. I don't know if that's quite respectful to their passion, because they do. I mean, you know, that's a subgenre of talk radio is sports stuff, and people.
Well,
the callers get very impassioned about, so this team should have picked up that running back or tight end or whatever, and because he was really good in his college career, and blah blah blah, you know, and all that. These people get really ate up about it, and but like I say, it's something other than that stuff that we all have to pay some attention to, like pandemics and civil unrest and government regulation and things of this nature. And it's a unifier too. I mean, there's a sense in which it's a common purpose, and they're all there to, like I say, get away from the background buzz of life, you know, and enjoy some wings and beer and
I mean, that's why they call it
talk
a
shop
game.
about their game. Yeah,
It's a game. Yeah, they wouldn't.
Yeah.
They don't call it real life or reality.
No,
reality TV is reality TV, and sports is a game.
The people, you know, as once the final buzzer goes off and they all leave the venue and go back to their cars, and you know, they don't beat each other up over it. Now that's kind of an interesting thing too. Over in Europe, they do have riots at soccer matches.
Oh yeah.
And soccer is supposed to be kind of the gentle sport that's played with the ball, you know, and
Oh yeah, because Europeans that brought us 2 world wars are, you know, have such a good track record of being peaceful people.
Yeah. Well, that's true, but I find that kind of remarkable that Europeans, you know, will have riots over soccer matches, but here in America, no. I'm like at a Packers versus New York Giants game, or Pacers versus Sacramento Kings or something like that. One team wins, one team loses, and the fans of each make their way out to their cars, you know, and go find some place to eat, have some more wings and beer.
It's like one of those things, like you don't know what you got till it's gone. Like I said, I've never really enjoyed sports. Sometimes they've downright grated on my nerves, you know. But at the same time, there's a lot of economic prosperity that's brought to a city or to a community by sports events, and there's a lot of you know, community pride and camaraderie that's brought to it by sporting events, and you know, just a whole lot of business and stuff to do pops up around those kinds of things. So you know, it's even me, who just, like, you know, the thought of watching a whole basketball game or like a whole football game, just like, man, you might as well kick me in the head for 2 hours. Like, I'm just not interested. But like, I kind of don't want to lose that, you know, in our society.
One other thing that it does, it sets up a cycle, a rhythm to our society's life, to our popular culture. It's just one of those background sounds, you know, the sound of a marching band on a field, or a sports announcer with those gimmicky little voices they always have, calling the plays at a football game. Yeah, summer is transitioning to fall. You know that when you walk through your living room and hear a football game on TV.
Yeah.
And same with, you know, the boys of summer, you know, spring training for Major League Baseball, and then they start into having their season, and it kind of makes summer more summery, you know, basketball in winter, and
right.
And so,
but if you went to the game, whether it's a high school or college game or a pro game, you know, and you're there at the stands even, and people are constantly just bothering you with all the crap that's wrong with the world, and handing you out flyers and playing commercials and propaganda and all this stuff, just like, you know, you came there to relax and have a beer and watch the game and forget about the fact that life sucks and has a 100% chance of ending in tragedy. You know, you just forget about that for 2 hours and watch the friggin' game.
Yeah.
And I think people get you know, put off by not just that, but by rich people protected in fortresses like LeBron James, you know, talking about this situation that really doesn't affect them, and I think they feel condescended to. I think white people feel condescended to when he talks about that kind of stuff, because first of all, there's probably nothing that Joe average dude can do about it, and LeBron's probably safer than he is in most situations. And I think I think many black people too are just like, this is sort of like a class warfare thing. Like, you don't know, like you may know what I'm going through, but you're not going through it too,
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think people are sick of that shit.
Exactly. And having virtue signaler shame them. I'd like to be your fan, but if you're going to shame me, count me out, buddy. I'm skipping this season.
And people should, because I mean, if it's not fun, what's the freaking point?
Yeah.
I worked with this club for a while. We were like a Mac users group, and
Okay.
I was a Mac support specialist for a number of years, and they wanted me to be the president of the club after like 2 meetings. And I was like, okay, I'll go for that, why not, and I went to like the first actual meeting of the board, and everyone's sitting around yelling and just talking crap about each other and being pissy, and I'm just like, Jesus, people, like, this is the stuff that we do outside of work to like have fun. I'm not gonna keep doing this, I was like,
Right.
if you guys are gonna act this way, I'm gonna quit, because it's not fun. And that's what the viewers in pro sports are being like. If this isn't going to start being fun soon, then I'm tuning out.
Mm-hmm. So, as I say, the NBA is still trying to wind up last season. Professional football is getting off to a halting start, both because of how to deal with pandemic challenges and now this crap. It's going to be interesting to see 4 or 5 months from now how all these leagues are faring financially, and
Ooh, I just had a great idea. Here's how we make sports interesting again. If everyone's interested in politics, let's make the teams, instead of like the Houston Rockets or the whatever Vikings or whatever, like make the mascots like Black Lives Matter as a team, Antifa as a team, and
there you go.
the
Proud Boys.
The Proud Boys are a team, totally. And then they get out there and they just but maybe they should probably play hockey or something a little more violent.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be awesome to watch BLM?
There you go.
Play hockey against the Pepe the Frogs. Oh my God.
Yeah,
That'd be amazing.
I like it, Clyde. So it's going to be interesting. I know that viewership is cratering, as that guy said in that article at City Journal. But
good, hell with them.
Yeah, let's. I think if they don't realize what's happening, it's going to. The figures are not going to be good in a few months.
We often have a segment called "Maybe Someday We'll Try a Free Market." Well, the market is telling you, telling everyone what the people want, and it's not more of that.
Right.
And you can say that the people, the people are stupid or the people are willfully ignorant or all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I think if you had like an activist who, was doing that stuff all day long and just wanted to watch the game, they might want to just, let it be the game and call it a night as well. But I don't know.
Yeah.
But the market, what's crazy is like sports is so invested in by the public sector. Sports stadiums are subsidized. They're so intertwined with government that it makes me wonder when football tanks and basketball tanks, what government assistance are they going to be getting? They're going to be on welfare.
Yeah. I could very well see the very stable genius saying, we can't have this. In America, sports are America's lifeblood. We got to, step in and aid them.
Oh, that would be weird too, because he's already kind of told them to go to hell. So, but I could see it. I could totally see that happening anyway.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, he routinely tells people to go to hell, and then the next day says,
right.
Gotta...
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I'll cut you and hand you a Band-Aid.
Yeah. Which kind of segues into our third segment. a segment we often do is called They Really Said That. And this week we entitled the actual content of that segment, Word Salads Are on the Menu This Fall. Both of these guys, I'm not that far from being in my 70s myself, so I don't want to. And there are plenty of people who are very robust in their 90s, but people can start fading, if you will, in their 70s. It's the decade of your life when that's going to start showing up if you're inclined to start to fade. And both of these guys are increasingly incoherent.
No, I think that Joe Biden is increasingly incoherent, and Trump is like levelly incoherent.
Okay.
What you say?
All right. But we'll start with Trump. He gave a interview with Laura Ingraham, who she started out as a clerk for a Supreme Court justice. I'm trying to remember who. I think maybe Clarence Thomas. And she was a speechwriter at the Department of Education in the Reagan era. And then she started getting doing some punditry, television punditry, which led to her own radio show. And she's quite. And when the Trump phenomenon came along, she just completely lost her marbles and became early on, before 2015 was over, she became a slavish devotee of the very stable genius. And I got to believe she was all pumped up about doing this interview on her Fox News show the other night. She asked him about situation with Jacob Blake up in Kenosha, and he said that, well, you could frame it as these cops choked, like a golfer missing a 3-foot putt, shooting this guy in the back 7 times. Law enforcement officers have to make split-second decisions, just like golfers. And it was just so. And she several times during that interview, and that was one of them, she had to rush in to try to save things because he was just, and then they had this exchange where Trump said, and Biden is, I don't even like to mention Biden because he's not controlling anything. They control him. And Ingraham says, who do you think's pulling Biden's strings? Is it former Obama officials? Trump said, people that you've never heard of, people that are in the dark shadows, people that, Ingraham says, what does that mean? That sounds like a conspiracy theory. Dark shadows, what is that? And Trump says, no, people you haven't heard of. They're people that are on the streets. They're people that are controlling the streets. And then he said, we had somebody get on a plane from a certain city this weekend, and in the plane it was almost completely loaded with thugs wearing these dark uniforms, black uniforms with gear and this and that. They're on a plane. And Ingraham says, where was this? And he says, I'll tell you sometime, but it's under investigation right now. But they came from a certain city, and this person was coming to the Republican National Convention, and there were like 7 people on the plane like this person. And then a lot of people were on the plane to do big damage. They were coming for, Ingraham says, planning for Washington? And he says, yes, this is all happening. What it turns out, he was repeating a rumor that went viral on the internet back in early June, 3 months ago. Somebody started planting this seed that there was some secret cabal of guys in black uniforms that were plotting terrorism in the midst of the civil unrest, and nothing, no substantiation has ever come forth, and by midsummer the thing had died. And the idea that Laura Ingraham has to come in and save Donald Trump's skin, which, by the way, I read the other day about how, it's in a new book, somebody's book. There's a million books coming out this summer, but Sean Hannity had started stress eating and picking up weight, and also vaping incessantly. And when somebody asked him about it, he said, man, you'd be vaping too if you had to listen to what I have to listen to whenever I talk to Donald Trump.
He's not wrong.
And Because in addition to Hannity interviewing him all the time, they talk privately on the phone at least once a day, and he has privately used the term batshit crazy to people to describe, and he's supposed to be a big slavish devotee of Trump too. These people, that's another thing that's going to be interesting to watch in the home stretch here of the election, because he's going to say weirder and weirder stuff. And
that's the thing about him is he says things in such an ineloquent way that even when he's right, you either one think he's wrong or you don't know what the hell he said at all.
Right. I like the way he talked about the Democrats and Christianity. So they want to hurt God. If there's one thing in the universe you can't hurt, it's God. But you're right.
That's funny stuff.
Okay, and now on to Biden. Biden gave a address in Pittsburgh yesterday, and kind of lost it, or he lost his train. At one point he said, "COVID has taken this year, just since the outbreak, has taken more than 100 years. Look, here's the lives. It's just when you think about it." He does this routinely, that loses his place and kind of and scrambles to piece back together what he was trying to say, and the sign language person off to the side didn't know what to do, didn't know what kind of signs to make. It's really quite, the video of it's quite funny.
I can't wait. I'll have to see if I can dig that up. If you have a link, send that to me so I can put it in.
Yeah, okay. Joe Biden was not doing well in the primaries until that one where he blew the doors off of Bernie Sanders. Kamala Harris dropped out after 2 or 3 primaries because her poll numbers were so bad. And these two, the Democrats are not excited about either of them.
No, they're not.
No.
And the far left is furious about them.
Yeah. He's not. Trump is the what's I think mainly sustaining his lead, but it fell to him because there weren't enough Democrats that wanted to go full Bernie to make that happen, and it's elder abuse. He's a frail man. He's fading. He ought to be home enjoying his grandchildren.
Yeah, and I don't know. Maybe there's a position for him to work still, but man, it's not steering the boat.
Yeah.
Not in iceberg infested waters, or
Yeah, this is a very interesting set of circumstances. We've got a pandemic, which has resulted in an economic. Is collapse a proper term here? I mean, for what?
I think at this point, depression.
Severe economic downturn.
Depression is warranted, and collapse is probably something that's on the table. But let's be clear: COVID-19 is not going to be responsible for depression or the collapse of the economy. Government regulation is, and in many cases, illegal government regulation.
Yeah, and then there's the whole matter of educating America's young, and a little something about that at all ages. I teach on a college level, and you've got grade school age kids, and at all, every day that you work on your course as either a teacher or a student, this question looms in the air: will we have to switch from meeting in the classroom to going online, or the other direction? If cases go down enough in our community, are we going to have to quickly gear up to go back in the classroom? Student performance, students progressing as learners is taking a hit. As much as online learning is being refined out of necessity because of this, it's still model in its infancy, and it's not.
Well,
It's not as effective as a teacher standing in front of your classroom and.
I think
Okay.
I don't think you're wrong, but I think that tools are tools, and it's how they're implemented
Yeah.
that does it. Like I think that the online school idea is another way you can see that government is ineffective at delivering services because in a private situation there's an incentive to cover those bases and to get the technical issues worked out and to have somebody who specializes in them
Yeah.
be the one to resolve them. But in our situation, the public school, online public school, is like the worst of both worlds because we are seeing how, um, you know, the lack of incentives to play a role in public school translates through the technology. It's stuff with bad interfaces. It doesn't work, and when it doesn't work, guess who is charged with figuring it all out? The teacher, while he or she is trying to teach.
Yeah.
And we've had whole days lost here just while the teacher's just trying to troubleshoot the technology. And homeschool programs, I know there's tons of homeschool programs that are already heavily online and fully developed, and they don't necessarily even have a live teacher all the time streaming. It's pre-configured coursework that's done and proven, and we're thinking about switching to it. I mean, we'd really like to see our kids go back to school so that we can have some peace and quiet in the house.
Yeah.
Because Amy and I are both working from home, but
I like this pod model that's starting to gain a foothold too.
yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, my point being, we've got a pandemic, we've got severe economic downturn, we've got uncertainty clouding our American education, uncertainty in the business sector, particularly businesses that depend on people being able to socialize, the restaurant business and the hospitality industry and so forth. And then we've got all the racial unrest that we've spent a great deal of time talking about today.
Mm-hmm.
And then these two, and then to kind of come full circle and talk about this last segment, we've got these two candidates that are just weird people to be putting up at a time like this. Neither one of them has a clear sense of the presidential level leadership that we think of.
Yeah.
And I guess the fact that we're doing this on September 1st and we're kind of going into the home stretch of the last third of the year, which is every 4 years, it's marked by the run up to a presidential election, and we've got a plate full in this country.
We sure do, man.
Yeah.
And when November rolls around, I'm going to pull for Dr. Joe Jorgensen on the Libertarian Party ticket, and I am going to be 1,000% remorseless for doing so.
Hey, she can put together a coherent sentence.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, she can.
Yeah. I'm 99% certain I'm going to write somebody in.
Yeah.
I can't stand there in that little cubicle and press a button for somebody I deem unfit for the office.
Let me make the case for you to maybe generously donate your vote to Dr. Jorgensen.
Okay.
Because I know that a lot of people aren't necessarily excited about her candidacy. And I think it's because she's kind of unknown, but the way that the ballot access situation works, the Libertarian Party has to get certain levels of vote totals in each state in order to retain the ballot access.
Okay.
So really, if you think about like your voting actually matter, people say, well, if I cast a vote for a third party, my vote doesn't matter because I'm throwing it away. But you're actually not, because they need people to vote for them to stay on the ballots. They need to get into the polls in order to be able to get into debates. So every little push that they can get, she probably doesn't have any chance of winning, obviously. But it's sort of like investing in the future. The LP, the the more momentum it can get behind it, the better chance they have of winning, and the better chance they have of winning, the better chance they have of getting better candidates to run on the ticket. So just vastly improve the organization overall.
And it would send the message throughout our society that we are a more nuanced people than just the image of a collection of tribes. The hustling brands.
Yeah.
That there are still people out there talking about ideas,
right?
And ideas and it's particularly human freedom. So, all right, I'll give it some thought, Clyde.
Give it some thought. I will not be offended.
Okay.
You choose what you want to do, but man, if you got to write in that you think I should consider,
okay,
I'll do it.
All right, we've covered a lot of terrain today.
Yep, I think it's time to wrap it up.
Okay.
So we'll come back here in a fortnight.
Yeah, we do this fortnightly and forthrightly from the virtual libation station.
Virtual libation station. So in the meantime, click subscribe. Subscribe to us on iTunes. Subscribe to us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Rate us on iTunes would be a huge help. We need lots of ratings to even get on the board. And you can support us at patreon.com/Barney and Clyde, and you can send us fan mail, hate mail, all that kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Praise mail, questions, concerns.
Yeah,
propaganda.
We want this to be very interactive. Yeah.
Lewd images.
There you go. Sure. All right. And always and every second of your life, stay vigilant about your freedom.
Well, that's an interesting development.